Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of FilmSnobbery Live. I'm your host, Nick LaRue, and we have a fantastic show for you today. I even dressed up a little bit. I put a collar shirt on. Hello, my dog. My dog just decided to come in and say hello. We have a fantastic show on tonight. We have a wonderful writer-comedian, Laurie Kilmartin, on the show. She has a new special out that I hope everyone gets a chance to check it out. It's called Cis, Woke, Grief, Slut. It is available now on Amazon, Apple TV, and YouTube, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about that. We're going to talk to her about stand-up comedy. We're also going to talk to her a little bit about writing for television, and pretty much whatever else comes up. So if you are joining us live, you want to put any comments in the little comment chatty box area, feel free to go ahead and do that. If not, don't worry about it. Just have fun. Watch the show. So that said, everyone, let's welcome our guest for the show tonight, Miss Laurie Kilmartin. Hello. Let's see. There you are. You're in the box.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm in the box. How's it going, Nick? Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, how is everything going so far with the launch of the new special?
I guess it's okay. I taped it in April of last year, so it feels like a long time ago. So it came out on January 30th, and so I've just been promoting it a lot, and I'm clipping it out and all that kind of stuff, and throwing it up on so many different apps. And I'm actually getting carpal tunnel from clipping. I think.
All right. I'm going to if you're not already using like separate apps or anything for stuff like that, I would recommend. I've been using this one called Headliner, and it allows me to kind of create audiograms, and I can insert video if I want to or stuff like that. I use it for like cutting out clips from this show and stuff and putting it on. I really have a lot of success with it. So not sponsored at all, nothing like that. But I really it's free. So that's another reason why. Yeah, I'll take that.
Sure.
And a little more intuitive, because I'll be honest, I resisted even getting on TikTok forever because I'm older now. I'm over 40, and so I'm just like, I can't do the TikToks with the kids now. It looks like granddad trying really hard to relate, and I just can't do it. And right. But it's weird though, because the engagement rate for stuff like that on even just like small stuff seems to be so much better than everywhere else. Where do you see on your travels within social media like the most success?
I don't know. It's weird. Like I feel how I feel about putting video out. Like it's just not my initial nature as a comic.
Yeah.
It just feels superficial. I don't know. I mean, it's such a dumb thing to say now, but because that's just the way things are. But it wouldn't be how I would normally, try to market myself. Like my favorite thing has always been Twitter because I can write jokes.
Right.
And it's short and encouraged short writing, brief brevity and all that stuff. And that's what I liked. And the effort to go into putting stuff up on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and just watching yourself. Like are there people that get pleasure in watching themselves? I'm sure there are, and there are psychopaths, but if I'm not, I mean, I'm a psychopath, but a different kind of psychopath. And so it's just, it's something I'm getting used to, and it is fun to try to, like, I put together crowd work clips, and it is fun to try to find a narrative within an hour-long set of when I called back and, talk to people and then go back to them and stuff like that. It's quite time consuming. But so that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, it wasn't what I was expecting to do.
Yeah, no, well, because it's never been up until recently like part of the job description, right? Like it's,
right.
I mean, you had bookers, you had promoters and stuff like that, and you would go to clubs and you would do your shows and then you tour and whatever. And then, yeah, it would build towards a special, and then there might be some promotion around that as well. But like, you even nailed it on like the crowd work stuff, because crowd work was always like this thing that, depending on who you were, I think that some people saw it as hacky, some people saw it as whatever, but now it's like a thing that people do and even interject themselves into, like, oh, crowd work, this is like part of it. I'm like, no, and some comics are like, yeah, they'll go in for it. Others are just like, no, we're shutting that shit down right now. Like, this is a
Yeah,
performance.
right.
This is not for you. Like, in that regard, you know. Where do you kind of like where do you kind of sit on the line of that, like on the crowd work stuff of like, there's ways to, I guess there's interjecting, right, like in terms of like just calming people down and like, yeah, we're all here to have fun, right, and then there's the other part of like they think they're part of the show, like where kind of where do you sit on that?
I've always done like I'll do a chunk of material and then talk to the audience and then do a chunk and talk like because people do kind of they don't have as much attention span to listen to someone talk at them for an hour. So you if you're talking with them a little bit, then they it just changes how they sit. They're kind of worried you're going to talk to them, or maybe they're having a good time with it. But it just keeps the energy up, you know.
Yeah.
So I've always gone in and out like that in my entire since I started doing at least 30 minutes when I realized, like when you're doing a 15-minute set in the city, to me it's like, all right, now I'm working on jokes, I don't have much time on stage, so I'm not going to waste it saying, talking to anybody. But if you're doing an hour on the road and it's not a place you're from, you're a stranger, you sort of need, it's a conversation you're having with the crowd, and I like that. I feel that makes every show unique.
Hmm.
And So I don't mind that at all. There are people that come with stuff, but then if they're trying to be funny, I just move on very quickly. I don't want to talk to someone that's trying to be funny.
Gotcha.
I like to talk to people that are being honest, and then because people are really funny accidentally all the time,
Yeah.
and then you can kind of riff off of that, and it's fun. But yeah, comics have said that the audience seems to be a little more chatty now, and I guess I my audiences are kind of chatty, but I feel like I sort of cause that by talking to them frequently anyway. So I can't really tell if it's worse or better, you know?
I I've always so in the time that I've seen your stand up live and also like watch clips and stuff like that, I always felt that you reminded me a lot of someone that you're just when you're sitting around and you're having a cup of coffee and you're just shooting the shit with. It feels a lot like that. And
Oh,
yeah, because you're very honest with your, what with your comedy, because you also get a little personal at times. Like your last special, it was 45 jokes about my dead dad. Was that it? Or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
When so when you'll do stuff like that, and so like it feels more like a friendly conversation that is slightly more one-sided than
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
I
it's I have such a reverence for stand up comedy because I've been injected into it, or I've had it injected into my life in various points. I remember my mom was a waitress at a comedy club, and so
Oh,
she
which
would.
one?
Oh, it's a place that doesn't even exist anymore. It was like Worcester, Massachusetts. I want to say it was
Okay.
called like it was almost like that Three's Company. This is how I remember it is. I think it was called literally
The
like the
Regal
Regal
Beagle.
Beagle in or something like
Great.
that. And so it was near Holy Cross College. If and I couldn't have been. I was definitely not even 10 years old. And my mom had to bring me to a shift once, and I sat in the back at the comedian's table. And
Wow.
I should not have been there.
Oh, I bet.
But I remember that so clearly at that being there. And then when I lived in LA, one of my roommates was he was an actor, but he did stand up as well. And so, he would come and he'd be like, hey, bring her shows, right? Like, oh, I need 5 friends to come with me to this
Right.
show at Flappers or something like that so I can get up. Or doing something over at the Ice House over in Pasadena, and he'd be like, you want to
Hmm.
come, and whatever, and then we'd go over his jokes and we'd do punch up, and he had me record him and stuff, and he'd be like, all right, so that was my 3 minutes, I want to work on my 5, I want to do this. It's so interesting to watch that process. And of course when you're up there and you're watching all these people, like, you get a few people who are like kind of they're working on through their half an hour, they're working through their hour, new jokes and stuff like that. And then you get those people who are just like I'm drunk right now, and this is just a thing I wanted to try, open mic type of things, and it's really weird. I told the story in the last episode of like I went with two comedian friends of mine to one show, and they you sign up and all that, so the MC knows who to announce and all that, and they wrote me in to go up without telling me.
Oh my God.
And that was the best set I had done because I'd done it once or twice other than that, and but being prepared made me more nervous versus being unprepared and just being called up. And it was like that fight or flight of like, well, I could either just run out of here, or I have to, and my friends get to laugh at me the whole time on the way home, or I go up and I at least try. And so that was really interesting. And then of course watching professional comedians like yourself and Jackie is fantastic. I've loved Jackie's stuff for years and years.
Yeah.
Just watching all that stuff and watching specials all the time. It's just great. It's a great time. How does going from writing stuff that is stage material to writing in a writer's room, what are some of the real kind of like differences in that, and does writing all day professionally for something like Conan, does that tap you out when it's time for you to go up and write some new stuff on stage?
Well, the first question, I was on the monologue team, so we didn't really have a writer's room necessarily. We all wrote separately, and then we would meet and go over jokes.
Okay.
And it was just a very different, like my stand-up is very personal about my life, and monologue jokes are topical. They're maybe good for 24 hours at most.
Mm-hmm.
And they're written in someone else's voice, so and different hosts have different voices. Conan was really kind of very traditional in that he liked a one sentence setup and then a one sentence punchline. I've like transcribed other hosts, when in attempts to do packets for them, and there's people that like have like 5 sentence setups. I'm so trained now to like condense it to one sentence. I'm like, clear this mess out. It's a lot of debris in this setup. So everyone's got their own style. So you kind of, learn to write in your host style, and then you're writing jokes that you can't even use. Maybe you could use it that night if he didn't want to use it or she didn't want to use it, but it's very different. And so it affected me positively. I mean, I would be tired at the end of the day, but then if I had a set that night, it was such a relief to, talk about my son or talk about parenting or talk about dating or just talk about anything that was about me.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what was hard was like focusing on these news topics that were so intense and sometimes depressing, and that was the hard part, was like trying to spin them in a way that was silly, and so at night it was just a relief to not have to work so hard to make things silly. Like it was much easier doing stand-up.
Yeah.
And it was also the discipline that I got from writing for Conan really helped my stand-up about myself. It really helped me shorten a lot of my jokes too. So it bled over in a good way.
Do you do that? Do you time yourself in all that when you're kind of working material out to kind of figure out things like jokes per minute, laughs per minute, or anything like that? Or no, like, because I know that there's there are some metrics for like in writing for television, mostly it's like sitcoms and stuff like that, when they talk about like how many jokes per minute and stuff like that. That's completely different than from the stand-up world then. I guess unless you're maybe Jimmy Carr or something, because that guy is just set up punchline. That's his whole act.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily, that's just his style.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know any comic that's like, any good comic that knows how many laughs they get a minute. I think every comic has an internal clock where you're like, oh, I need a laugh right now. Like I'm talking too much, right? And some people, their clock is very different from mine, but my clock, I try to have very short setups. And if I have to explain a lot for the main punchline to work, then that that exposition needs to peel off into little jokes as well. That's for me.
Uh,
Otherwise, I get uncomfortable.
okay.
I'm here for laughs, you know?
Hey, me too. I completely understand. Yeah, I love going to comedy shows. It's one of my favorite things. I've never have even a what would could be considered a bad show is never a bad show
Yeah.
for me. Like I went there with
Oh,
the
really? Oh, good.
yeah, no, I go there with the express intention to have fun. Like I'm there to laugh, and I might not maybe in some cases laugh as much as I would have wanted to, but everyone's gonna give something. I
Yeah.
remember going to one show. It was at Flappers, and I went to one show. My buddy was there, but there were other people there as well. And I brought my mom, and my mom and I are very similar laughers. We laugh with our whole body, and we are very just like we are there for the fun. My wife, however, is a little bit more. I think I told this story a show or two ago as well, which was just like my wife is a little more on the judgy side. She takes jokes personally, and I'm like, and not like
Hmm.
she's gonna like call out or say anything, but she's just like, oh, I don't know if I should laugh at that, and I'm just like, no, Ange, laugh. It's okay. These people are professionals. They wrote this for you. Like it's okay to laugh. Like
Yeah.
it's. Do you find ever that with with the perception that society is getting a little bit more selective of what is funny or is not funny or what you're allowed to laugh at or not laugh at, do you feel that you've had to kind of tailor material a little bit more one way or the other?
No, I mean, if you're working on material, like I think the toughest chunk I had to work for this special was the stuff about my mom dying of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And, people were always taken aback when I'd start talking about it. But because I had already done a special about my dad dying, I'm like, oh, this again. All right. So and it just takes a little extra massage, to get you. I want, there's certain jokes I want to say and I need to get a laugh on them. So either I figure it out or I put it down.
I got
And
you.
I just keep going and going and going till I have like 5 minutes on that topic.
I got you. It was you had posted on Twitter. It was back earlier in February. This one blurb I brought it up from the Minneapolis Star Tribune, where they said, "I hope you like dark comedy." Kilmartin says at the top of the set, recorded in Los Angeles, the veteran stand-up then proceeds to deliver jokes about the September 11 attacks, Anne Frank, and fetish pornography that should not be attempted by amateurs. How does it feel to go pro with Anne Frank jokes? Um,
To me, that story isn't about Anne Frank. It's about my son freaking out about female, female, normal female body stuff. Because the story is about me reading Anne Frank to him too young. And that's how he finds out about menstruation, because she talks about menstruation.
yep,
So to me, it's about my son reacting to that. And then, how it ends is me trying to make things better for everybody involved. That's I don't want to do the bit, but
right.
it's pretty easy to find.
I
But
got you.
yeah, so when people are like, "Oh, it's an Anne Frank," what's not really an Anne Frank joke. I don't make fun of Anne Frank. I'm making fun of my son's reaction to her natural,
Bodily
her
functions.
natural body issues. Yes,
Yeah, I
exactly.
gotcha. No, it's I just as far as like when you see people talk about comedy and it's out of context. My first thing was just like it's
Yeah.
the part on me that got that was not so much like that you're talking about even September 11th attacks or Anne Frank or even fetish pornography, because I've heard I say almost filmmakers. I just heard comedians do that all the time, right? But the part
Yeah.
of that where it says shouldn't be attempted by amateurs is the part that caught my attention. Of like, no, pros only. Uh, I thought that somehow was funny to me. So my
Yeah, yeah.
uh, I would love for you to take me a little bit into like the world of how did you get that or land that gig at Conan, because you were there for his almost entire run on TBS while he was there. Was that a
Yeah.
someone from that production saw you saw your set, saw you performing, and then said, hey, we would like you to try out for this? Did you have to write a packet or something like that to kind of prove that you could do it? What was kind of how do you even have the staying power to do that for as many years? I mean, that's a very intense gig, and I don't think a lot of people understand kind of like how like crazy late night hosting is, and like that writing, uh, uh, that entire like way that those shows come together.
Right. Well, I had done a couple packets. I did a packet for late night. I didn't get a job. I did a packet for Tonight Show when he had the Tonight Show. And I think
Mm-hmm.
from what I was told, I was like almost going to be brought in. And then all that stuff with Leno went down.
Yep.
And then I did another packet for the TBS show, and that's the one that worked. And it wasn't. I just was friends with Brian Kiley, who's the other. He ended up being the other monologue writer. It was just the two of us by the end, but he's been with Conan since late night, and so I knew him from stand up, and so he would just tell me, "Hey, we're looking," and then I would do packets. So, um, to me, it's weird because like everyone seems really fixated on when you're like, oh, I need a writing agent, but all of my gigs came from comics going, hey, it's or friends with writers going, hey, we're looking, not from agents.
Right.
But so Kylie's the one that always flagged me and let me know when they had an opening. Um, and then what was your second question? Oh, about hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an intense job. I think by the time like I what I would hear was when they were doing late night, they stayed really late, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those hours sounded terrible because I'm a single mom, and when I started working for Kona, my son was 3, and so luckily, by the time Conan was at TBS, they were a very well-oiled machine, and so no one was staying till 11 o'clock at night anymore. Like they kind of figured out what they liked, how they did it, and they knew what they were doing. So it was pretty normal hours. Every once in a while, we'd stay to like 7 or 8, but nothing crazy, and that was infrequent. So I was lucky in that in the time where I needed a writing job with like regular hours because of my son,
Mm-hmm.
I had one. So was incredibly lucky for me.
That's no, I think that it's incredibly aspirational for also anyone out there who, whether it's a single mom, single dad, whatever the situation might be, that you figured out a way to have both parenthood and your career, and be able to do things that a lot of other people don't get a chance to do. And I think that that's fantastic. Kind of growing up around what you do, does your son exhibit any indication that he might want to get into the industry at all, or is he just like, no, my mom has been talking about my baby dick for however many years now, I think I might want to try to go be an architect, or something like that? Is it, or do something that's more stable, so that, when I say stable, I mean that in those way of like how the entertainment industry is always in flux and stuff like that, as opposed to like an architecture job where you go do your 9 to 5 and then you're done and you get to have like, what other people consider to be a normal life. You know what I mean?
So right now, no, my son doesn't really have an interest in stand up. He's seen a ton of shows,
Yeah.
he's funny. He's very funny, but he's an animator. Like he's
Oh, that's
17,
cool.
or he has a comic on Webtoons, and he's working to animate it right now with this app called Procreate. It's
Oh, yeah.
apparently amazing app. Yeah. So he's like casting his friends as voices, and it's really cool. I'm like, you're a producer now. You're casting, and you're doing auditions and stuff like that. And he's also obviously did all the characters and everything. So he wants to go in that direction. And he wants to study 2 and 3D animation in college.
That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know, um, you know, if that is what he wants to do, and it seems like he's already got a really good handle on, this is how you get it done, and of course, can always ask Hughes because he has a resource. That is really cool. Yeah.
Well, it's weird because I have no idea of that world. So, I mean, I guess I know people I could ask, but I'd
Yeah.
have to think really hard. He, I, we got, he started going to classes at this little animation academy, in Burbank, maybe like a year before the pandemic. And so after the pandemic, the academy closed, but the group all stayed in touch, and so they still meet once a week. So he, has, I guess, like maybe since age 12, has been kind of like the kid hanging out amongst these grown-ups that are talking about work. So he, I think, has a kind of a realistic idea of what a job would be like, how hard it is, what he needs to study. Because he's just been like eavesdropping and hanging out with these adults, and now like there's young kids younger than him in the group too. So it's kind of a cool mix of new animators and seasoned veterans, So that's more of a resource for him than I am in the animation world, for sure.
No,
Although I
that's
guess
that.
I could probably think of some people I know that could help or talk to him or something if we needed that.
No, but it sounds like he's taking the steps. He's putting the work in, and I think that
Yeah.
I think that anyone who is probably a kid of someone who does stand up, it knows a thing or two probably about having to put the work in, because knowing the few stand ups personally that I do know. It is a grueling process. I mean, you start out doing all your open mics, and then maybe you graduate to your bringer shows, then maybe you get to whatever. I mean, of course, we were talking a little bit about, like, and then there's just some people who just get famous from TikTok or Instagram or something like that, but they still have to eventually end up with an audience somewhere live, and they're going to have to perform, and that takes time, and learning how to you pace things out and how to speak properly, and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's really he's obviously seen you put the work in, and kind of it seems like that did not skip a generation. It looks like he's putting the work in. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think the one thing I was able to give him was the notion that it's not this insane, like this fantasy career. Like you can have a career in show business. Like when I was growing up, the idea of being a comedy writer was I couldn't make that leap in my head. I sort of got into it through stand up, but so he's been raised by someone who would go to a studio every day and work and type, and then come home. So I think he kind of I guess that's a thing, an advantage of having a stand-up or a writer as a mom, is that it's not, you're not necessarily super famous or
Mm-hmm.
starving. You can be like in the middle, and that's kind of doable.
No, it's a. I'm sorry, I was checking as you were wrapping up on that. I was checking the chat to see, and there is someone who says "woo." Maybe it's you. Um, Someone is saying "woo." I'm all for that.
Yay.
So it's just, stand up is such a fascinating thing, because it's a job where you intentionally are going out to make people feel good, and even if you've had a shitty day, your job is to go out and make people feel good. I mean, like, there's only like really one other job that is very similar to that in a different way. And that's a doctor, where it's just like that doctor could be personally having the worst day of their life, but their job is to go out and make someone else feel better. And I feel that that's a really it's just always been a real interesting career path, because it doesn't get a lot of the same type of recognition, and it's so like comedy in Boston is, for me anyway, like where I've traveled, is the same in Boston,
Yeah.
it's the same in Chicago, it's the same in Texas, it's the same in wherever, in terms of like, once you walk into that club, and you all go for that experience, and you pay for your two drinks, it doesn't matter really who's on the stage. We're all in for it, and it's a wonderful kind of thing when it's done, and it's even better when it's done well. Where's your favorite place to perform?
Let me just address one thing you said, because I don't know any comic who actually says I get to make people feel good. I mean, if they do say that, they're lying because it sounds altruistic and good.
Yeah.
Comedians, what we want is to get a laugh. We want to extract something from the audience.
Okay.
And it's quite selfish. It's not, I wouldn't put in all this work because I love humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting all this work in because I like the feeling of getting laughs. So
Okay.
it's not, I'm glad it makes other people feel good, but that's not why I'm doing it. And I don't know any comic. I think anyone who says that has come up with a way to try to make themselves seem like a better person than they are, because they aren't. I mean, we're all incredibly selfish that way. And the amount of work that it takes to become a good comedian,
Yeah.
no one does that for out of generosity. You do it out of selfishness and ego. So my favorite place to perform, ooh, I don't know. I mean, everything. I love everything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a favorite. I mean, my home club, the San Francisco Punchline, is like, it's so sweet. I love it, you know? Um, but yeah, I'm pretty, I don't know.
It's
New York. I
New
mean,
York. I mean,
yeah, there's so
is it? Does
many.
it go more about? Is the question even better? Does the question get better if I add which place has the best place to go after your set?
Well, you're talking to a female comic, so I go home to my hotel and hopefully not murdered. Um, if you talk to male comics, they can tell you the best strip clubs or whatever. They lead different lives than we do. But for me, yeah, but I was just in Detroit at the Comedy Castle and a very nice hotel. I liked the hotel. They had a great breakfast, really, really good fruit in the morning for breakfast. That's rare at a hotel. Usually
Interesting.
it's just like, cantaloupe, or just like, green and brown bananas. Like, how is it ripe and too ripe and too green at the same time? So, yeah, that's I don't really go party, after the show. I go back to the hotel, and if it's not too late, I FaceTime my son, and you know,
That's it, huh? It's funny because you hear a lot of comics that I think the younger crowd still goes out and does some stuff after the their sets or whatever. But the older I get, the more that's the story that goes, or that it goes around when I talk to other comics. So like, oh, what are you doing after the show? Are you gonna go get a drink? Are you gonna go hang out somewhere or talk somewhere or something? And they're like, no, man, I'm going back to my hotel. Like, number one, I'm on the road again tomorrow. Like I've got to,
yeah.
whether they're driving somewhere or they're getting flown somewhere or something like that. It's part of it. So that makes sense.
Well,
But
I think if you're well, if you're at home and you're doing spots where you're living at home, like if you live in LA, you're doing shows in LA, then
yeah,
yeah, you would hang out a little bit maybe. I mean, it's also, when you're first starting too, you want to hang out with other comics. Like, you're just like comedy and you can't get enough of it, right? And it's
yeah,
good, and that's fine. Um, but when you're on the road, it's kind of, um, even if you're a male comic, it's still a little dangerous to be like, you know, and they don't have the same things to worry about that women do, but it
true.
is a little, and a lot of people are sober, and if you're out hanging out, there's not, being from Boston, you must know there's some Boston comics that took a dark path, right?
Oh yeah,
And because it was the 90s, and this was like an uncharted territory in terms of a career, and they were just wild, right?
yep,
But now we know, like, oh, if you party like that for a decade or two, it's not going to be pretty when you're 50. You're going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
in a studio apartment on Social Security or something. So I don't know, maybe the industry is a little more mature, and not that people, I mean, there's comics that are getting hammered. That's just a tradition, but I do think, like, there's other people as well that maybe aren't. I don't know.
Yeah. It is, yeah, and the Boston comedy scene is definitely a little more, yeah, especially you're right around the
Iconic.
'90s and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a little more. It felt Wild Westy. I also felt though,
Yeah.
there was, I don't know, I I don't know, there was something about going to a comedy club at an age I should not also have been in a comedy club. That to me felt
Hmm.
like, I don't know. It was. I'm going somewhere with this. I lost the complete plot of what the hell was going on in my head. That happens. Um, have you ever frozen on stage? Has that ever happened? Of just like I forgot everything that was supposed to come after this joke.
I forgot. I've been on stage where I haven't done a joke in a long time and I start it and part of me is like, I don't even know what the next word is. And my muscle memory and my mouth takes over. And I'm like, oh yeah, this one. Thank mercifully I got to the punchline. I could not, if you'd have told me to transcribe it, I write it right down. I couldn't have, but there's the joke's still in your head and your body will still tell it. Um, I don't know about like I don't since I stop my act so much to talk to the crowd,
Yeah.
if for a second I blank, I go right, I'll even identify it. I think blanking is like freezing is more like you don't know what to say. And to me, if for some reason your brain just goes blank and you mention that kickstarts you right back in, you know? Um
Can you tell within
so
the first
yeah.
couple of minutes of doing a set somewhere whether or not you're like, oh, this is going to be a good room, or like, oh, this is going to be a room where like I'm going to have to work a little harder on this one, like or I might have to do a couple
Yeah.
of jokes that like, oh, I know these work, in this kind of crowd. Do you kind of read the crowd that way?
Yeah, you can tell really quickly. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I tell me a little bit about your kind of your process for when you are starting up like a new tour. Do you kind of do that thing where I know Eddie Izzard did this when he did a special kind of about him make, I think it's called Believe. It's like a documentary.
She,
Love that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
yeah.
I forgot. I completely, yeah, yes. Um, when she was doing the special that the documentary Believe, um, she went ahead and was saying that like what she'll do is she will do she'll phase out old jokes and inject new jokes as the thing goes on, so that by the time the end of the tour kind of comes around, it's almost all new material, and that's what goes in the special type of thing. Do you kind of also do something similar, or is it more of like, as you've been touring from the last one, are you writing all of these all this new material, and it's like you're just working out that new material the whole time?
Well, the notion of touring, that's really new. It feels like that's a marketing scam for comics to say I'm on a new tour.
Uh huh.
It's like that's all we do is go on the road. It's nothing's new. I mean, you go, that's where you make money. If you're not on the road that week, you're not making money. And if you are, you're making money. So we're constantly on the road or trying to go on the road.
Gotcha.
So it's like when someone posts their schedule and they're like new dates coming, it's not a tour. It's like we're contacting bookers and trying to get them to book us.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a smart thing to call something, a tour for this year. It's a way for people to come back and see you.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it, but I mean, it's really that's something we stole from music, and it's not quite accurate because most comic, you're like, okay, so I did my special in April,
Right.
and at the time I taped it, that was all the material I had that I liked. And then May came around, and I'm on the road again, and I'm doing, I would say, 90% of what was on the special. It's okay, the special hasn't aired yet,
Right.
and I'm starting to dump material I'm sick of. Some jokes I was like, I'm never telling this joke again once I get off this stage at the El Portal Theater, right? Like I'm sick of it.
Yep.
And others were like, oh, I just started this joke. There's maybe more here. Did I blow up by putting it on the special? Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant, nonstop, lifelong pursuit of new material. It's not a tour thing, you know? And I think by the time you get a new hour, you know, for some comics, it takes a year. Others, it takes several years. And then now, you know, now we're in the habit of like, okay, we'll make a special. But before, you had to get someone to do a special for you. You had to like catch the eye of HBO,
Yeah.
you know, or Showtime. And just recently, it's like, all right, I'll tape my own and put it up for free. Like, and these specials, they cost the comedians like 15 to 40 grand.
Yeah.
And these aren't people making a ton of money, you know? When I see people putting stuff up free on YouTube, I know it's really smart, and hopefully it will lead to lots more money and lots more followers. But I know that they really are in the hole, and they may never recoup that money, you know,
Yeah.
unless somehow the algorithm picks it up and they take off, you know. It's much more expensive to be a professional stand-up comedian than it used to be. Now, if you take off on social media, you'll make a lot more money too than you used to be able to.
Yeah.
But not everybody who spends 40,000 of their own dollars on a YouTube special is going to make $300,000 the next year touring. So
It
it's
amazes me sometimes that there are still comedians that are still releasing quote unquote albums. They're like, oh yeah, I got a new album dropping, you know, for, you know, or CD or something like that. I think I, Kyle Kinane or something like that maybe did something not too long
yeah,
ago. Or yeah.
he has something coming out very soon.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. Is that even still kind of, you know, with, I know that like Spotify doesn't pay crap, you know, for anyone, musicians or otherwise. I mean, is that still kind of uh, a tool of the trade, so to speak, to be able to have like an album, or do you
Yeah.
feel that, and almost now with how technology is, it has to be videotaped? Even
I
videotaped is
would,
not the right term, that we don't use
right,
that
right.
anymore. Recorded, I guess, video recorded.
Yeah. I would, I mean, my special is available as an album, so it's being played, you know, on various things. So you might as well do both.
Hmm.
But obviously, it's way cheaper just to do an album. You do get, if you can get play on Sirius, you can make some money
Yeah.
from, you know, you make a certain amount off of each bit they play, you know.
Yeah.
But that's the only one. And the other ones don't pay anything. The other ones, again, you just hope people listen. And then when you come to town, they're like, oh, I heard that lady. I want to go see her live. And then it's all an attempt to get people to come into the comedy club.
I gotcha.
But Sirius pays a little bit, you know, and depending on who you are, like Kathleen Madigan gets a lot of play on Sirius, so she makes a lot more money than me, you know. So some people make a shitload, and then some people just, it's like grocery money for the month. It depends.
Is do you? I mean, who are some of the icons of comedy, male or female, that you've looked up to in the past? To go like, that's the career that I see for myself, whether you're already living it now or that you want in the future, or you know, what are some of the things that make you laugh, some of the people that make you laugh,
Oh,
besides,
let's
you
see.
know, dumb white guys with way too much confidence on the internet?
Most white guys don't make me laugh. Kyle Kinane
That's
does.
fair.
No, yes. No, I don't know. I mean, there's so many, it's hard to even, there's so many fucking funny female comics right now. It's unbelievable. Jackie Cation and I have a podcast, and we've been doing a comic of the week. It's always a female comic
Hmm.
since 2015. And I was like, well, we'll run out by 2018. But then I don't know, so many women are doing comedy, and they're so good. Because they've watched so much stand up, they got to go to comedy school. So they got to like skip like 5 years of being a hack,
Hmm.
And, so I can't, I mean, Marcella Arguello is just really funny. She's great. She has a half hour on HBO that's, I forget what it's called, but it's a great half hour. And she's not famous enough for sure. But it's hard to just name one really, or, the industry is exploding. Comedy is very popular right now, and there's so many funny people. And so yeah, I don't
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that that's a really interesting kind of sign of the times too, because as you know, some people want to sit there and look at the state of things everywhere, look at all of the everything. And then they go like, yeah, but stand-up comedy is going to thrive. And why? Because we really need to freaking laugh right now. And I think also like there's that form of therapy of telling those jokes too, and getting that out there. Like you said, whether it's, for ego purposes or for, I think that, some people are working their own stuff out of like, this was my experience. You might enjoy this. It wasn't funny for me at the time, but maybe it is now, or something like that. Yeah, it's
Well, I
yeah,
think people want to, uh, I think if you are not a white male comic, and you will hear white male like that, I guess, that division of comedy talk about you, right? So
yeah,
you'll hear, if you're a woman, you'll hear male comics say women do this, and you're a woman, you're like, oh well, I don't do that, and I don't know, one of my, my friends don't. Well, I'm going to tell my own story then, because I don't want to hear you talking about women, because you're wrong. And I think every kind of comic that's not a white male has heard themselves described by comedy, the comedy profession, and been like, that's not accurate. And why are you saying it?
yeah,
And so the last, like, especially I'd say the last 5 to 10 years, everyone that wants to, I feel like there's so many comics coming in to correct perceptions of who they are or who their families are or whatever, in a hilarious way. And I love it because they also sort of take away the ability to be really hacky about some stuff,
yeah,
because it's like, no, this, I know this guy and this comic talking about, his immigrant upbringing or whatever, and it's nothing like you are saying about him. So I'd rather hear from the horse's mouth than your impression. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
people, stand up is so accessible for someone who wants to tell their own story.
Hmm.
And all you have to do is sign up in an open mic. That's what's really cool about it. It's, and very punk rock about it, is that you just have to show up, and whatever the open mic puts you through, you have to pay $5, you have to bring two people, but after that you can just go up and you have your 4 minutes, 5 minutes to do what you want to do. And that's amazing.
Yeah,
And so many other parts of show business require a degree, or you have to know somebody, or you have to have family and all this kind of stuff, and it's really prohibitive for a lot of people. But stand up, now you may not be super successful without all that stuff,
yeah.
but stand up, you can get up on stage, and that stage is yours for that short amount of time that you have it, and that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It being a my first time doing an open mic, it was at a deli, and I want to say it was like Culver City, might have been Venice, but I think it was Culver City, and the deli was still open, taking orders as where like people are going up and saying stuff, and it was almost all entirely other. There was no odd. That's the only thing about for me that was always weird was that for those open mics is that very rarely is there an audience. It's just other aspiring stand-up comedians, and I did like though that if you could make one of those folks laugh, that made me feel good. And believe me,
Mm-hmm.
the laughs were not coming a lot. You've had this whole conversation with me for the last hour. There's not a lot of laughs here. There should be, but there's not. But if I could even get one right out of them, like I was, that was my whole night. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
all I have to do is get one laugh in 3 minutes, and then that's all I have to do, and I can build off of that, and that's, that goes to the next
Hmm.
one and the next one and the next one. I love watching new. I used to go to the Nerd Melt, went back when Meltdown Comics was still there.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's why first time I saw, I actually got to go backstage the first time I met Brian Posehn, and Camille
Oh, yeah.
Nanjiani, and
Hmm.
all of, a lot of people who are both I'm fans of prior to that, and then like new people that were kind of up and coming at the time. That was so much fun. It's one of the benefits of living in a place like LA is like you really do get to see that. In Boston, it's more like you end up meeting people at the bar. Like my mom called me one day. She's like, I'm having drinks right now at Pub 99 with Dennis Leary. And I'm like, she goes, you should come down here. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Dennis Leary. She's like, yeah, he's here with his brother, and we're just having some drinks and talking. You should come down. And I'm like,
Huh.
I okay, I couldn't at the time, but I'm like, thank you for letting me know. Tell him I said hello, I guess. Stuff like that. It's not as common, in places like here, but like if you are lucky enough to be in a place like LA, it's, there's a bunch of different places to play, that are doing open mics, because everyone is trying to break in, and obviously then you have these great these stand up comedy like icon places, like, obviously the Improv is there, and then you have uh oh my god, I just blanked, the over on Sunset, obviously.
Comedy Store, Laugh
Comedy
Factory,
Store.
Flappers, Comedy
Yes.
and Magic Club in
I
Hermosa. Yeah,
never
there's a
went to the
lot of
Magic
great
Club. It's the
rooms.
only place I
West
didn't get to
Side
go to.
Comedy Club in Santa Monica is West Side and the Crow. So
Yeah.
there's some like new places coming up too. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss that. We brought up the 80s and the 90s. I do miss the explosion of comedy clubs, like that, like Dangerfields and stuff like that, back when
Yeah.
like all those started and stuff like that. Like there was like this like explosion of like these new comedy clubs, and some of them tried to like franchise and be chains and stuff like that, and not as successful as, all of that, the Comedy Store and all that kind of stuff being kind of, thing. And then if you're in New York, there's the Cellar and all that. But yeah, I would say, so I know we're kind of coming to the end. I am so thrilled you to take the time to come on. I do appreciate it. I would love
Sure.
what can we go ahead and promote for you? Obviously, you got the special. Let's promote that. Let's promote everything else.
Yeah, if you go to my website is lauriekilmartin.com,
Hmm.
and there's links to, you can watch my special on Amazon, on Apple TV, or YouTube. So you can just click, it'll take you right to it. I'll be March 20th, I'll be at the Lincoln Lodge in Chicago for one night only on Wednesday, March 20th. Thursday through Saturday on the 21st, I'll be at Ann Arbor Comedy Showcase in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I will be in Portland at Helium on June 6th, I
Hmm.
believe. I will be in Vermont at the Vermont Comedy Club the very first weekend of June. I will be at Dayton at the Funny Bone in May. I don't have those dates off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah, I told my wife
And
about the one in Vermont. I was like, well, I might have to come and see you there because that's just close enough.
oh yeah, do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
it'll
be
be
fun.
beautiful then too. So, I mean, what an easy drive.
Yeah.
Vermont when it's not snowing, oh my God. Yeah.
I just took my wife there last weekend. We went to Brattleboro, and I took her to a bead
Oh,
store
neat.
because I'm a good husband.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. Yeah.
um, so, no, so thank you for coming on. And yeah, I think that if anyone has not had a chance to see Laurie Kilmartin live on stage, you absolutely should. The specials are obviously great. I just enjoy seeing you live, and yeah, and yeah, I think that yeah, lauriekilmartin.com. Check her out at any Laurie any Laurie 16 on Twitter and some of the other stuff. Is that what it
Yeah.
is? Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to, I obviously didn't think this would be a professional tool. So my username on Instagram and Twitter is Any Laurie Laurie 16. Any as in any Laurie.
All right.
It's Laurie Kilmartin on TikTok though.
Laurie Kilmartin on
I
TikTok
learned my
though.
lesson. I learned my lesson.
Well, again, again, thank you so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. You believe it or not, you're one of the few guests I've had on. This is 126 episodes. Nothing comparing, by the way, to your show with Jackie. You're in like 450 something episodes. Crazy.
Probably, yeah.
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 And but you're one of the few guests made me nervous. I got a little nervous. I was like, I wanted, because it's just a profession that I really, really enjoy, and and obviously, being able to speak to a professional about it is always a really nice thing. So thank you for taking.
Oh my
time.
gosh. Sure. Are you still nervous?
I'm still nervous. I'm still a little nervous. I'm a little
Oh my God.
No, I get the vapors. No, it's
Sure.
no, it's you do things that I really appreciate with comedy, but also like in terms of your career with not just stand up, but like with writing, with I watch, you're in my Twitter feed, so I watch how you deal with people. I'm like, I love that. And it's just, you know what it is? It's a lot of respect. And so
Oh gosh, thank
I
you.
know, we're not used to that. That's not what this
I
show's
know.
about. I'm a film critic.
No
I'm not supposed to
comic.
respect anyone. No.
No
But
comic
thank you.
is used to respect.
I know.
mean, please.
Um,
Rodney set the tone. We
Rodney
get
set
no
the- it's-
respect, so that's
Absolutely.
very exciting.
Well, thank you again for coming on, and we'll next week we have no show because I'm traveling. I'm on tour now, so because I have
Yeah.
I've got a book coming out in June. I'm starting my tour. I'm going to be down at the South Georgia Film Festival. I'm going to be interviewing folks there. I'm on their jury as well, so hopefully I like your movies. Otherwise, no, no, I would not do that. But I'll be
tell
in
me
Georgia.
when you do, tell me and I'll retweet your book link, okay?
Please, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
that's
yeah.
going to be behind the scenes of indie film marketing because it's
Neat.
it's a completely dry subject, but I try to make it fun by having cool interviews with people like Kevin Smith and Roger Corman and Lloyd Kaufman and all those folks in
Wow.
it. So, and
Well,
also
yeah,
a
I
lot
think-
of female filmmakers as well, other writers and filmmakers that I respect as well. Amber Benson and is in. Who else do we have? Bria Grant and Paula Rhodes and so many great people. So I would appreciate it, and thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. The replay for this should be up probably tomorrow. Again, no show next week, but then the week after that we'll resume our regularly scheduled program until I have to head to Florida for the next part of the tour. So thanks a bunch, everyone.
Yeah.
See you in a couple weeks. Bye.